you hear me okay as well?
Yes, I think sounds perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's-
So tell me about yourselves as well while we are waiting. I've met Abby in London.
Perfect. You're in London right now. Superb. I'm based out of Delhi currently, and I'm not sure.
I'm actually based out of Singapore, but currently I'm in India. So yeah, traveling a little bit for personal things, but yeah, heading back soon. Yeah.
Mm.
Stuff.
So I'm actually working with another firm based out of London. We are actually building AR VR games. So yeah, super cool stuff.
Okay.
Wow. Interesting stuff. Cool. This will anyway be on our YouTube, and this will also go up as a show on our YouTube in a bit. So we'll just start off the live session. We'll have people join as we talk. And really
Sure.
excited to have Mickey and Pranav on Voice of Crypto's podcast today. Two veterans from the Web3 crypto space. And as our viewers know, we get really interesting guests every Wednesday on Web3 Wednesdays with Voice of Crypto. And today we have two amazing gentlemen with us today. And I would request Mickey and Pranav to please go ahead and tell our viewers what you guys are up to currently and what sort of journey you've had in this space. We can start with whoever wants to go first.
Well, would you like to go
Sure, Mickey,
first,
you want
Pat?
to take first?
Yes, please,
Uh,
please do.
Go for it. Go for it. So, yeah, we're doing lots here in London. Crypto space is definitely boiling. So I started a property DAO in 2020. That one's called Yoga Box, aimed at nomadic travelers. We've had over 40 tenants in there, so that went really well. And that's on-chain governance in real life and providing profits and impact pools to the community's growth. So that was really fun there. Then we set up Art Set Gallery and DAO in 2021, focused on arts, music, and fashion communities, phygital. So we have our physical NFT gallery in London with projectors, screens, projection mapping, and AR plots, metaverse plots, and different gaming verticals. And we've produced at the moment as well, getting ready for some amazing digital fashion drops for London Fashion Week at the end of the year.
Sounds pretty amazing. And what about you, Pranav? What are you up to nowadays?
Awesome, Mickey. So yeah, I think from my side, mostly in blockchain industry for around 6 years, 7 years almost now. You know, initially more towards as an individual contributor and then turned into entrepreneurship. My main work right now is moving towards W3C's DID space, where we are actually building a digital verification, issuance and verification platform. So the company is based out of Singapore. We've been in the market for around 4 years. Other than that, I'm doing a few more stuff, which is in Canada and London. Other than that, I have worked all across Asia in that perspective. Yeah, doing strong in terms of Singapore market. Yeah, things are a little bit, obviously, as Mickey mentioned, a little bit volatile. But yeah, things are going on pretty well. The regulations are holding up even after whatever happened last year. So yeah, definitely improvement all around. But yeah, looking forward to even more stuff and probably like more third world countries where like India, Philippines, or some parts of Korea, to come up in like bigger numbers because of the user bases there.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. And pretty awesome stuff both of you are up to. And I think I'll get back to one term that the two of you use, which is volatility. And we know volatility is the name of the game in this market. What are your views on the current state of the crypto market, that being our topic for the day, incidentally. So, what are your views of the market? Regulations we'll talk about later on. Let's just talk about the social purview of the market and what people are presuming. Maybe beginners, people who are sort of like guides at the technology. What is their purview of the market, and what is your view on the current trends? Mickey, maybe you can start off first.
Um, yeah, I'd say unfortunately, like the mass retail trader or the laggard, as you're calling them, is probably always going to have the wrong lens.
Mm,
Statistically, you can look at the history of that. So, never really too fussed about their view. I mean, when we set up in 2020, obviously these people didn't know what was going to happen, and maybe they still don't know what's going to happen. So, I think their view is negative due to the price point, but I think you could really analyze their view on where the price point is. So if it's up, everyone's happy and making memes. If it's down, everyone is assuming crypto is
yeah.
over and they've all failed. But if you look here in the UK, especially geopolitically in comparison with what America's poor chess move was, um, there's a lot of movements actually. There's a lot of capital moving. There's a lot of setups, a lot of VC and legal and political movements. So here in the UK, they're trying to onboard A16Z is coming here. We're trying to make rules to accommodate DAOs, decentralized finance, and it looks like we're going to unfortunately have that CBDC sooner rather than later. And the groups are already forming, the think tanks are forming, discussing, asking for help from crypto people. So I'd say the building season is very strong.
Mm,
And of the true people that are building some really, really cool stuff. They know exactly what they're doing, and they're building an ecosystem and network, as the crypto people always have, that will be very powerful. I don't think the retail traders are gonna feel that again until the price point and marketing starts to come back, maybe in the next 3 to 4 months.
makes sense.
Obviously, we've got halving next year, but I think it's very fun and very good.
Couldn't agree more. And what about
Awesome.
you?
I would say something on the similar notes. Definitely, the market's not at best. The traders are not very happy. Definitely, the short and the long position traders are kind of moving across, still getting by. But in terms of, as Nikki Kargi mentioned, that the average market is not very heavily invested, and I think that's more towards like how the whole scenario has been and what's going on. But I think overall, in general, the market is pretty positive. Even in the last 24 hours, Bitcoin already had like 10% up. So that itself describes the volatility at some levels in a perspective where 10% in financial markets will be disturbing in a day.
Hmm.
So in a way, I would say that there are tons and tons of good people across the world who are really, really building solid platforms, solid infrastructure layer platforms, and some solid chains that I'm seeing coming up with very good tech, especially ZK coming up to like fully mainstream products. And once I think all of that actually comes in and people really start seeing the benefits, I'm pretty sure those memes runs are going to come back. And definitely that's like part of the volatility that kind of gives crypto its volatility. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's more towards we keep growing as a how I should say industry in general. So yeah.
So of late, I think AI has been pretty much the talk of the town. A lot of people are rebranding themselves as AI-driven firms, and there are, of course, a lot of memes in the market about how a lot of Web3 entrepreneurs are pivoting from being Web3 entrepreneurs to AI entrepreneurs. What are your views on the sort of the convergence of AI and blockchain? Do you see a lot of potential in this arena? Let's talk about the tech first. Whoever wants to go first can.
Let me probably take this one first. So I think again, coming from an individual contributor into engineering and then entrepreneurship perspective on tech side first, I think I have seen this whole transition happening because before blockchain, I was again technical on big data itself. And again,
Yeah.
I think that's like a transition layer in terms of how data is manipulated and worked towards. So I would say both the technologies are definitely widely different. Definitely AI is talk of the town right now, and people are betting on it because they are seeing quite a lot of potential there. But I would say potential in terms of blockchain is not yet lost. And blockchain, like any other supportive infrastructure, including which I feel AI itself is also supportive infrastructure, which can actually enhance the existing Web2 platforms into something better. I would not say directly Web3 or maybe even something better than Web3. So in a way, let's say we take a traditional Web2 platform, if we apply AI on top of it, it becomes better. And if we take a traditional Web2 platform, we apply blockchain on top of it, it improves and gives some other fundamental benefits in terms of a product and a market fit of how these things actually affect and works towards kind of help in that. And I think if we obviously combine both AI and blockchain, that itself becomes a different beast. And I think if we include both of that, definitely the product market fit and the benefit to the consumers is what technically should be like the base point to make it good work. But I think at the end of the day, it will happen. And definitely people are transitioning because they are seeing the benefit of how people can actually take for it. And again, talking about tech, I myself have been very invested in AI perspective. I was already consulting for an AI company in the past, but in a way, I want to go towards, I've already been trying a lot of models and whatever else is going on in the industry from the tech side. I have been documenting some of my findings on the LinkedIn posts and the articles I generally publish. But technically speaking, this is a very, very, very big industry. And again, I would say this is like way back in when blockchain was in like 2016s. So we definitely should see a lot of boom from a technical standpoint for sure. And that definitely converts into a product and business mindset. Yeah. Mickey?
Yeah, completely agree with your analysis. And I just urge to say how important that combination of AI and blockchain actually is now. If you look at different lenses to do with Web3 and tokenization, and then AI as well, or machine learning, applying Web2 centralized thinking to those is going to make really small organizations that own the whole internet already. Amazon and Microsoft have a very good portion, and I think Microsoft is a very big investor in OpenAI and ChatGPT. So all of you think of the tech stack, all of the consumer nicenesses that people will be playing with, the apps that we make, are all going to be based on that technology stack and the servers that are currently there. And that is not a great answer for humans and diversity and governance. So if you look at Singularity Net AI is a really cool one. They're the blockchain on Cardano or ADA, the AI tokenized project, and they're again attempting to decentralize, have nodes, and have community management within their AI access and framework. So I think open source and blockchain is the only way to go in that paradigm. Otherwise, we're going to do ourselves a big disservice as humans in the future.
Makes sense. Agreed. And while there is a lot of potential that we see in the sort of merge or convergence of these two technologies, let's look at the current regulatory state across the globe. And it is seemingly a little bit bright in the United Kingdoms, even in Singapore, a few other nations around the Asia Pacific region. But if you look at United States, and they've sort of self-branded themselves as the leader in terms of crypto revolution that took place, even adoption of cryptocurrencies. But now, when we look at the sort of regulatory battle or tussle that's between quite a few centralized exchanges and the US SEC, people are saying that this would have a larger impact, and we are sort of seeing an impact on the narrative that was around Web3 or cryptocurrencies, not Web3 per se, but cryptocurrencies, so to say. So, do you sort of agree or disagree with that stance? And do you feel like we have been put back a couple of months or years? Years, not so sure, because crypto years look a lot more different than they do outside. So, I mean, does this put us back in terms of the development that the space saw, or even the narrative, the general narrative that it had?
I'll go first then. I think I would say it's actually the reverse. It's like the product builders the ecosystem builders, the community builders. At least I also come from a community-based standpoint where I have built communities on blockchain in the past. And I can tell you upfront that maximum people are using this time in terms of till the time the business and the regulation gets finalized to actually build the base layer even stronger. Okay. Because at the end of the day, if business moves fast, tech cannot move faster because at the end of the day, tech is there to support the business. And that's my take to it. If you see in the general market from where we are running after the bear run in last year or two, I would say most of the time you'll see tons and tons of building actually happening. It's a documented phenomena that investments into Web3 companies have actually, down to a pause if you compare like 2021 or 2022. But if you compare that in terms of the projects that are actually being built, published, and kind of growing, has kind of gone up in record numbers, if I say. Again, I'm not considering the pump and dump and the scam projects and the meme projects by any chance. I'm talking about the core development where people are building the base layers, they're building roll-ups, they're building ZKs, they're building contracts, they're building ton of infrastructure layer projects, which eventually will kind of serve as the base so that other people and entrepreneurs can also build products on top of it. So yeah.
Absolutely. What's your take on it, Mickey?
What was the question? Sorry.
So we're talking about whether the recent regulatory tussle in the United States has sort of put us back in terms of development, and Pranav thinks that it's quite the contrary. What would you say about it?
Put them back. Don't know about us, but like, I mean, honestly baffled. They put in the place. America put in the place. Some sporadic laws, or some people did last year. Delaware, the Minnesota thing. A few attempts to say that they would be bringing DAOs into their fold, and then a year later, just turn their back on the whole industry, including some of the biggest in the scene, and causing them to choose to change jurisdiction. I don't know how or why they chose that plan geopolitically. I don't think it will do the dollar great in the long run, maybe in the short run, but I can already, as we see, we're not in the US, and we see the flight of companies, capital, founders, investment, all going to much more favorable hubs around the world. And I don't think once they've made that decision, it'll at least be 2-3 years, if not longer, before they started thinking about going back. So I think the rest of the world is looking to capitalize on that poor chess move, and it's not going to stop. Obviously, you can't stop crypto. It's decentralized, and all of the builders and companies are very excited. So they're just going to look for places that want to help.
Yeah, I'm sure. And
maybe we can actually connect with the years long, I should say, in some perspective, with the case that Ripple is already fighting, and that essentially has definitely kind of, not, I would not say hammered, but impacted a minimum percentage of people in terms of how they view crypto. But as Mickey also said that, blockchain is technically decentralized. So that doesn't stop any of the utility in terms of any other country or any other governance or any other person in the world to kind of accept that. I would say regulatory perspective, I think every other country is actually capitalizing on it. If you see the regulations that are kind of building in EU or Dubai, or especially Singapore in this perspective, because Singapore from a long time scenario had some basic laws in terms of crypto. And that was kind of the initial base. Even I remember a lot of Hong Kong companies were coming to Singapore to set up. And that kind of serves as a base of how that can evolve into, that this certain uncertainty in one part of the market can definitely be improved and taken advantage of in others. So, yeah.
Absolutely. But I think that on a larger note, it is a rather conducive environment for Web3 firms and Web3 entrepreneurs to prosper at this time. And like the two of you rightly said, that bear markets are generally the time to build, and bull markets is when we see all the hype and memes and all of that, yada yada. So, moving on, I did see that you've both worked in quite a bit of startup environment. Mickey has been a mentor for quite a few entrepreneurs, and Pranav, you've also worked with quite a bit of startups and Web3 entrepreneurs. One concern that a lot of Web2 entrepreneurs have, or not a concern as much as it is a school of thought, is that there's a lot of noise in the Web3 space for VCs or for investors. It is a lot more difficult to churn out noise from what is, in fact, providing utility. So, if you have to look at products or projects or even services, how do you sort of separate noise from what is, in fact, imparting utility to the larger ecosystem? So, is there a way that you look at projects, or how do you basically assess a certain entrepreneur or their business? I think, Mickey, you can just take that one first.
Yeah, so I always had quite a big background, so I always look at the applicability of the idea first of all. So everyone's made a metaverse, but are they gonna be able to log on, have the audience log on at scale, hold
Hmm.
that many communities as Fortnite, the graphics hold up, etc.,
Yeah.
etc. So there's like technological questions in the feasibility of what
Hmm.
person is proposing, including the rest of the ecosystem. And then to metaverse project, it's still got quite a fair way to go before those ones are sorted. I think Apple will hopefully sort that one out. And then obviously team funding, use of funds, and then I'm also a very big analysis person, so community, audience, and looking at the traction of that product or brand within.
What do you say, Pranav?
I think I kind of agree with what Mickey says, but I think I take a slightly alternated approach on this. Again, coming from the tech background and going into the business side, I think I basically have two major components that at least I look for. And one of them is actually bought from Warren Buffett's cookbook. And I remember him mentioning that whenever he wants to judge a company, he basically picks up their like annual report and reads through it, and then rather than looking at the valuation of the company, he looks at the valuation that ideally the stock or the company should have. And I
Yeah.
take a similar approach. What I
Hmm.
do is first I look at their technical contributions, because at the end of the day, blockchain is still tech. And if you're contributing in the space, it's very important that you have a very sensible roadmap and good people on the team who are actually building. And the bigger point is consistently building. So I look at regular updates in terms of whatever they do on the GitHub or whichever platform they're using
Hmm.
in terms of how it is. That's step one. And the second thing that I generally look at is consistent updates. There are definitely a lot of noise in the system, but again,
Hmm.
noisemakers are the people who generally are very short term. If you have seen any good project and it has given you consistent updates, even however bad or good the market goes, if you see those consistent updates for a period of time, and that period can be customizable based on person's ability to judge and see and how things go. If somebody is a risky person, they can probably see 2 months of updates and go in. But somebody who's a very conservative investor in a way may even probably see 6 months of updates and then judge, okay, this kind of looks right, team is there, team is working hard, and things are happening. And then final thing I technically don't always look at, is how the market is performing and reacting to that project. What is the utility the entire thing is offering? Because at the end of the day, I from an internship and startup perspective, I honestly believe if there is a good team and a focused product, a focused team can always pivot into a better product, whichever is requirement of the market at the time.
Hmm.
Even if they are not at the perfect spot in this particular time, and they are
Yeah.
very consistent and they're hardworking, pretty sure in 6 months they will pivot into something that will make it work for them and their product. So I would
Absolutely.
say again, those are like two to three things that I generally will look at.
Yeah, no, couldn't agree more with the two of you. In fact, great ways to judge a product or project by. So, if you have to, let's say, give three pieces of advice to Web3 entrepreneurs or people who want to be successful Web3 entrepreneurs, what would they be? And while I said three, you can keep it lower or higher, the number, whichever one wants to go first. Yeah.
Mm. always the same advice. I'd say for any human, these are psychological advice, passion, because you've
Yeah.
got to keep going, determination, because you've got to keep going, and longevity in your thinking, because you've got to keep it all going over that long time. So I think those three, the, the drive to take your very distant mission,
Mm,
huddle mission, and then the passion and happiness to drive into it every day.
absolutely.
I think I will want to expand on Mickey's point, because I think whatever Mickey said definitely always stays on any entrepreneur. I have been one in the past, I still am. And that
Mm,
those things are like the driving factors in terms of your daily bread and butter, in terms of pushing that piece out. But I think my advice for people in general will be, first is have a solid tech team, because at the end of
mm,
the day we are fighting like a technology market. And at the end of the day, if however strong, intelligent, and the best person you can be, if you don't have a strong team behind you, you will
mm.
probably not be able to support for a very long time. Because
Yeah.
again, you would know most of the co-founders initially burn out, and then they go for standardizing, formalizing, and doing other stuff in general in that perspective. So my honest suggestion to everyone is, if you're starting new and you don't have a lot of experience, always take time, be conservative in finding people. But once you find them, to stick with them. And the second thing will be more towards, be very at least resource sufficient till the time you don't raise funds. Because obviously, I mean, given the current scenario and regulations, I think the funding is definitely kind of went down humongous
Mm,
in this Web3 space. This kind of gives out in two ways, where you can definitely get more people initially who can be like a contributing core member in the long run. Okay,
yeah.
and definitely open source is a way to go, but it's not always the way to go in some type of projects. So I would say those are the two things to choose. Definitely one is the team, and second one being, how you spend that initial capital. And capital is not just money. It's again your efforts in terms as well, because you as a person will also burn out after a while. So yeah.
Yeah. So I would pivot a little bit from where we were from an entrepreneur perspective to a more investor perspective. If we look at how investors are acting in the market at this point, and how institutions are accepting or not accepting the technology, what are your views on it? Do you think that despite the bear market, institutional investors have still been keen on the technology, and do you think that in the coming quarter, would what would investors or institutional players, what would their strategy be in the coming quarter? I think Miki, you can go first, followed by Pranav.
That's the question again. Sorry.
So we're talking about how institutional investors would react in the coming quarter, and we know that quite a bit of institutional investors were laying low, largely due to the regulations. But in the coming few quarters, 2 quarters rather, what is your expectation from this cohort?
Yeah. I'd say. I mean, I find it harsh sometimes to split it between retail investors and institutional investors. We could just say clever analysis and like non-clever analysis or surface analysis. But people that take surface analysis are not going to invest at the right time, and they're going to put all of the precautions they hear on the market. I think the clever and aware players in the market, whether these are big groups or individuals, are aware of the geopolitical framework at the moment, are probably
Hmm.
predicting a growth at some point before the next halving next year. So we're really adding up all of our runways, burn rate, investment, um, cash in that next 6 to 12 months for there probably to be another possibly bull market, but definitely an incline and a growth. And again, if you look at all of the big brands that are doing a lot, especially with digital fashion and retail space, avatar, metaverse too, there's a whole huge leap of big brands, institutions, or clever groups of people pushing forward there. So they're already building, already releasing. It's coming out now, but there's probably going to be a cascade of those um, consumer events all the way till September, December, and then I think that institutional money will be flowing in. and by early next year, I think the media will be reporting of crypto again, and everybody might receive positivity by then.
I kind of agree with what Mickey said in terms of the money flow and the timeline. In terms of, I think the rough timeline is how Mickey is describing, but I think there is one factor that enables that timeline to be kind of stretched out or stretched, or maybe
Mm.
not happen at all. And I think it's the general market. Okay, it's like after all the SVB and whatever the bank crisis we are actually going through in the United States with the debt ceiling and whatnot going around. I think
Mm.
that will be one of the focus. And again, if that entire piece kind of settles down and the market is more, I would say, deterministic in some perspective, then definitely the entire timeline that Nikki is definitely talking about is roughly on the same note, and it's not something that you cannot uh, just predict. It's not really prediction by standards, because at the end of
Yeah.
the day, if you look at like last 5 years in terms of how the VC money into projects and how the institutional investors have been looking at it from crypto perspective and Web3 in
Mm.
general now. It's roughly on a similar curve. Definitely a month or two front or back, but definitely goes in this way. That I think one of the reasons that kind of crashed really bad from an institutional standpoint, at least for this year, is again whatever else is happening outside Web3 and traditional finance markets. So yeah.
Absolutely. And since you mentioned the term expectations, and I usually keep this as my last question, we're almost at the end of our time as well. So I'm just going to ask this: what are your top three expectations from this year? And you can talk about the NFT market or the crypto market or how Web3 trends would pan out. So, just what are you expecting from the market from a very personal point of view? I think Pranav, you can go first, followed by Mickey.
Mm, okay. I think from my side, I think the first thing is a lot of infrastructure projects that were technically kind of being built over whenever like the bear market started are kind of coming to a level where they're already at launching phase and fruition. Okay. And this translates into Web3 adoption going up
Yeah.
by miles, because that helps other people to come and build fast. This technically means faster iterations, faster products, and easier go-to-market strategies that in turn will kind of convert into multiple projects going out way faster than whatever we have seen, at least in Web 2 and Web 3 combined. So I think that's one. And definitely the second side will be the job market to kind of probably improve by some standards. Even tech in general has kind of gone through a lot of shifts with whatnot, from firings to whatever is going on in like entire tech industry in general. I think all those are improving with the AI coming in, and people transitioning into like a better, more competitive people in different new domains. AI being definitely one of them, but there are other domains that are coming up as well. They're definitely not as popular as AI has become, but there are definitely other things that people are looking at. So yeah,
Thanks for those
Mickey.
three pointers. Mickey, what would be your expectations from this year from the Web3 market? And where do you think the NFT market and the Web3 space would be headed by the end of this year? So, your top expectations from the space.
I think it's going to be really interactive and really social, branded. I'm a big digital fashion person, of the arts, music, and fashion
Yeah.
communities, and it's like hopping in London, basically the convergence between music, influencers, and digital fashion and Web3 events is already huge, and it's just going to get bigger for the
Mm.
end of the year. So I think we've got some wearables coming out attached to some DJs,
Yeah.
and I think this model is going to be rolled out. So there's going to be more people on chain with creative capacities. So hopefully there's going to be a lot more interaction, ideas, and sharing. So I think soon we're going to get another NFT surge like last year, but it will be much more creative and true to probably the real artists and creators, and will be much more fun and accessible to the wider audience.
Absolutely, and with that optimism in mind, we do hope that this is how the market would indeed turn out. And I couldn't agree more with the fact that there is going to be a lot more happening in terms of music and fashion NFTs, and there's already the emergence of sort of NFTs and digitals. So I think a lot of interesting things happening in this space with wearables. Apple now finally getting into it and releasing their gear. So for sure, there's a lot to look forward to. And on that note, I would once again like to thank both of you for joining us here today and our viewers for joining us today. We went live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter, and this would stay up as an episode on YouTube for a good time. So do head over and follow Pranav and Mickey on their social accounts. We'll be tagging them later on. And do give a thumbs up if you all liked our episode. Once again, thanks, Mickey. Thank you, Pranav. Thanks for
Thank
joining
you.
us today.
Thanks, Mickey. Thanks,
Have a
Mickey. Thanks,
good day.
guys.
Ciao, ciao,
Peace.
ciao.
Peace.
Pleasure was ours. Bye bye.